Picture this. The year is 1500. You're standing in the Portuguese royal court, watching the most beautiful woman in Europe dance at her own wedding feast. Maria of Aragon, 17 years old, youngest sister of Catherine of Aragon, who will one day marry Henry VIII. Portuguese chroniclers can't stop writing about her beauty. Like an angel descended, one writes. Hair like spun gold, skin like alabaster, eyes that could make bishops forget their vows. She's marrying King Manuel, the first of Portugal, the most powerful king on the Iberian Peninsula, a man 14 years her senior, who just buried his previous wife Maria's own older sister, who died in childbirth 9 months ago. Think about that for a second. Maria is literally replacing her dead sister in the same man's bed. But tonight, none of that matters. Tonight, she's dancing, the court is celebrating, and Maria has no idea that in exactly 17 years, her face will have rotted off her skull. This is the documented medical account of Renaissance syphilis, not the sanitized version they teach in history class. The real one. The one that turned a teenage beauty into a living anatomy lesson that physicians traveled across Europe to witness. If you believe that the documented medical horrors of history deserve to be remembered exactly as they happened, consider liking this video and subscribing. Your support helps us uncover the accounts that medical textbooks tried to erase. Let me show you what really happened when syphilis met European royalty. The wedding night is April 30th, 1500. King Manuel is 31 years old. He's buried 2 wives already, both of Maria's older sisters in fact. Both died in childbirth. Portuguese court records show an unusual pattern. Manuel has a documented history of mysterious ailments that court physicians can't quite diagnose. Chronic sores, intermittent fevers, skin lesions that appear and disappear. Here's what nobody in that room understands yet. Syphilis has been burning through Europe for exactly 5 years. It arrived in Naples in 1495 with French troops, spread across the continent like wildfire, and the medical establishment has absolutely no idea what they're dealing with. They call it the French disease if you're Italian, the Italian disease if you're French, the Spanish disease if you're anywhere else. Nobody calls it what it is: a sexually transmitted bacterial infection that will kill millions over the next 4 centuries. Maria conceives within weeks of the wedding. Court records track her pregnancy carefully. She's meant to produce a male heir to unite the Portuguese and Spanish thrones. By month 3, she develops a rash. Physicians noted in their records small red spots across the torso and limbs. They prescribe bed rest and herbal poultices, standard treatment for pregnancy complications. The rash spreads. By month 5, the spots have become raised lesions, painful to the touch. Maria stops appearing at court functions. Official explanation: the pregnancy is delicate. She needs rest. Here's the truth recorded in physicians' private letters. The lesions are weeping, producing a clear fluid that stains her bedding, and they smell. Think about what this means for Maria. She's 17 years old, pregnant, covered in painful sores, and she has no idea what's happening to her body. The baby is born in October 1500. A son. He lives 14 hours. Physicians note in autopsy records extensive skin lesions covering the infant's body, malformed bones in the skull and limbs, liver grotesquely enlarged. This is congenital syphilis. The bacteria crossed the placental barrier. The baby never had a chance. Maria is devastated. Court records describe her as inconsolable, but Manuel needs an heir. Within 2 months, she's pregnant again. This is where the medical documentation becomes almost unbearably detailed. Portuguese royal physicians kept meticulous records, not out of compassion, out of scientific fascination. Syphilis was new. They'd never seen disease progression like this, and they had a royal patient they could observe continuously. Maria becomes a living medical experiment. Second pregnancy, 1501. The rash returns within weeks, but this time, it's different. The lesions aren't just on her torso, they're on her face. Small red spots across her cheeks and forehead. By month 4, the spots have become pustules, raised, pus-filled bumps that physicians describe as resembling smallpox, but distinct in character. By month 6, some of the facial pustules burst. This is where the horror really begins. When syphilitic lesions burst on the face, they don't heal cleanly. The bacterial infection has compromised the tissue too severely. Instead of scabbing over, they form deep necrotic ulcers, dead tissue, rotting while you're still alive. Physicians document the progression. Ulceration beginning at the left nostril, extending laterally and superiorly. Tissue death evident by discoloration and odor. The second baby is stillborn. April 1502. Autopsy shows the same pattern as the first. Extensive syphilitic damage, malformed skeleton, massive organ failure. Maria is 19 years old. She's buried 2 babies, and her face is starting to collapse. Here's what makes this especially sinister. Syphilis in its secondary and tertiary stages doesn't just attack the skin, it attacks the bones underneath. Specifically, it causes a condition called syphilitic osteitis, inflammation, and destruction of the bone tissue. The nasal cartilage goes first. By 1503, court records stop describing Maria's appearance directly. Instead, they note that she receives visitors only in dimly lit chambers and prefers to speak from behind a screen. Why? Because her nose is collapsing. The septum, the cartilage dividing the nostrils, literally rots away. The bridge of the nose loses structural support. The external nose begins to cave inward. Physicians describe it clinically: progressive saddle nose deformity with exposure of the nasal bone. Translation: you can see the bone inside what used to be her nose. Think about the psychology of this. Maria was famous for her beauty. Poets wrote verses about her face, and now she's hiding behind screens because courtiers can see her skull. She gets pregnant again. Third time, 1503. This time, the facial lesions spread to her lips. Physicians document extensive ulceration of the lower lip, with tissue necrosis extending to the mandible. The lower lip is rotting off. By month 5 of the pregnancy, the lip ulceration is so severe that eating becomes difficult. Court records show special diets prepared: broths, soft breads soaked in wine, anything she can consume without significant chewing. The baby is born, September 1503, another son. Deceased within 6 hours, same pattern of congenital syphilis. Maria is 20 years old, 3 dead babies, face collapsing, and Manuel still needs an heir. Here's what nobody tells you about Renaissance royal marriage. You don't get to stop. Doesn't matter if you're dying. Doesn't matter if every pregnancy ends in a dead infant. Your job is to produce a male heir. Maria gets pregnant 8 more times over the next 13 years. Let me repeat that. 8 more pregnancies. Every single one ending in either stillbirth or infant death within days. And with each pregnancy, the syphilis progresses. By 1505, physicians note complete destruction of the nasal architecture with exposure of the underlying maxillary bone. Her nose is gone. Not collapsed, gone. There's a hole in the middle of her face where the nose used to be, and you can see the bone of her upper jaw through it. By 1508, extensive palatal perforation, the roof of her mouth has developed holes. The infection has eaten through the hard palate. She can't eat normally. Liquid leaks from her mouth into her nasal cavity. By 1510, bilateral destruction of the zygomatic arches with exposure of the orbital floor. Translation: the cheekbones are being destroyed. The bone around her eye sockets is becoming visible. Here's what physicians across Europe are doing. Traveling to Portugal specifically to observe Maria. She's become famous in medical circles. The longest documented case of advanced syphilis in a living patient. They're not trying to help her, they're studying her. Letters between physicians describe her as a singular opportunity to observe the complete progression of the French disease in vivo, in a living subject, because most people died long before the disease got this advanced. Maria is still alive because she's royalty. She has access to the best nutrition, the best nursing care, the most advanced useless medical treatments available. She's being kept alive to be studied. Think about what this does psychologically. You're a queen. You are famous for your beauty. And now foreign doctors are requesting permission to examine you like you're an anatomical specimen in a medical theater. By 1512, the facial destruction is so complete that court records describe courtiers wearing pomanders and perfumed cloths when in her presence. The smell. They can't handle the smell of her rotting face. Physicians document it. Profound malodorous discharge from the facial lesions, consistent with extensive tissue necrosis and bacterial colonization. She's rotting while alive, and everyone around her has to wear scented masks to endure being in the same room. Here's the thing that should truly disturb you. She's still getting pregnant. Pregnancy 11, 1514. The fetus dies in utero at 7 months. Has to be surgically extracted. Maria nearly dies from the procedure. Physicians note her condition. Extreme cachexia, medical term for wasting syndrome. Extensive facial bone exposure. Probable involvement of the cranial bones. The skull itself is being affected. By 1516, she can barely speak. The destruction of the palate and jaw makes articulation nearly impossible. Court records show she communicates primarily through written notes. She's 33 years old. Married for 16 years. 11 dead babies. Face almost completely destroyed. And she's pregnant again. The final pregnancy, 1517. Medical records from this period are fragmentary, but what survives is horrifying. Physicians describe widespread necrotic ulceration extending to the calvarium, the top of the skull, with visible exposure of the dura mater. The dura mater is the thick membrane covering the brain. They can see the membrane covering her brain through holes in her skull. The baby is stillborn at 6 months. Maria hemorrhages. Doesn't die from the hemorrhage. The physicians manage to stop the bleeding. What kills her is infection. Sepsis. Her body is so compromised, so riddled with necrotic tissue and open wounds, that bacteria from the environment simply overwhelm her. She dies July 7, 1517, age 34. 17 years from the beautiful bride dancing at her wedding feast to a woman whose face had literally rotted off her skull. Here's what haunts me about Maria's story. We have the medical records, detailed physician accounts, letters describing her condition, court documents tracking every pregnancy, every symptom, every stage of deterioration. You know what we don't have? A single document recording what Maria thought, what she felt, what it was like to watch her own face disappear in the mirror. Because nobody asked, nobody cared. She wasn't a person to these physicians, she was a case study. The physician who performed her autopsy published his findings, described in detail the extensive cranial involvement and destruction of the facial architecture. The document became required reading in European medical schools for the next 50 years. Maria of Aragon, the most beautiful woman in Europe, reduced to an entry in a medical textbook. Case study, advanced tertiary syphilis with cranial involvement. Here's the question that should keep you awake at night. How many other Marias were there? Renaissance syphilis infected millions, but most victims weren't royalists, didn't have teams of physicians documenting every symptom, didn't have their progression recorded for medical posterity. They just died. Faces rotting, bodies failing, completely erased from history. Maria only survives in the historical record because she was useful to physicians. Her suffering was educational. Think about that. The only reason we know her story is because her agony was considered valuable data. And here's the thing. Syphilis is still with us. Still infecting people. Still destroying lives. We have antibiotics now. Penicillin cures it easily in early stages. But left untreated, it still does exactly what it did to Maria. Still eats through tissue, still destroys bone, still kills. The disease hasn't changed. We've just gotten better at ignoring it. The Portuguese royal court never acknowledged what killed Maria. Official death records list complications from childbirth. As if the 11 dead babies and 17 years of documented facial necrosis were just unfortunate coincidences. King Manuel remarried 4 months after Maria died. His third wife was 19 years old. She gave him a healthy son within a year. The cycle continued. If this exposed a medical horror that history tried to erase, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep uncovering the documented suffering that textbooks buried. Drop a comment with your thoughts on how medical ethics have or haven't evolved, and I'll see you in the next investigation.